Good morning. I'm sorry, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for attending the San Diego chapter of BAPAC. This is our Mayoral Forum, and it is our last forum of the year. I know some of you have been with us the entire time that we've been doing this, and we really appreciate that. And for the newcomers, we are happy to have you. My name is Elise Pitkin-Allen, and I'm the Vice Chair of BAPAC, which stands for Black American Political Association of California. We can vote. Whenever I think about voting, whenever it's a presidential election, I always think about Bloody Sunday that happened in 1965. It was the Selma to Montgomery marches. There were 3 protests held in 1965 along the 54-mile highway from Selma, Alabama to the state capital of Montgomery. The marches were organized by nonviolent activists to demonstrate the desire of African-American citizens to exercise their constitutional right to vote in defiance of segregationist repression. They were part of a broader voting rights movement underway in Selma and throughout the American South. I think about it because that impacted my grandmother and my great-grandmother. By highlighting racial injustice, they contributed to passage that year of the Voting Rights Act, a landmark federal achievement of the civil rights movement. Somehow, that march reminds me of what's going on today. The fact that we, without voting, we may lose our democracy. I want you to think about that if you haven't voted yet, how important it is. And with that, again, welcome. And I will now introduce you to Cheryl Alethea Phelps, who is our great moderator. Cheryl.
Thank you, Elise. Good afternoon, all. My name is Cheryl Alethea Phelps. Thank you so much for joining us. It is my great privilege to serve as moderator of this final BAPAC San Diego Voter Education Forum for this 2020 election season. I'm so honored that you consider me to serve in this capacity, and we'll continue on and have a great program. And for those who haven't voted, caravan to the polls. The purpose of this nonpartisan convening is to give all people, particularly Black voters in our region, the opportunity to hear from the candidates seeking to represent us as mayor for the city of San Diego. In alphabetical order, they are San Diego City Council President Pro Tem Barbara Bree, who currently represents Council District 1, and Assembly Member Todd Gloria, who currently represents the 78th Assembly District. I may have said Assembly District earlier, I meant Council District. Council District 1, and Todd Gloria, who represents the 78th Assembly District in the state legislature. The city of San Diego is home to some 1.4 million people. It's the largest city in San Diego County and a dominant presence in this binational mega region of more than 5 million people. The mayor is a powerful political, economic, social, and cultural influencer, locally, regionally, statewide, binationally, and nationally. This person is the face and the voice of our region. The San Diego's strong mayor form of government puts significant executive power in the hands of the mayor, allowing him or her to make decisions without the input of the city council or the city manager or the people who elected him or her. So it's important that we understand their values and positions and plans. So our program format this afternoon, as usual, the candidates will have no more than 2 minutes for their opening statements, 1 minute to respond to questions, and 2 minutes for their closing statements. Should a candidate go over time, I will gently say time. Once, then twice, and then maybe a little larger, louder, and then take other initiatives, kicking it back to Kevin, or maybe even pushing the mute button. But I trust we're all going to be civil and stay to the prescribed time limits. During our yes, no, I don't know round, candidates, you will only have a few moments to respond. So please be on your toes so as not to miss the opportunity. Regarding the questions, the BAPAC San Diego Candidate Forum Committee conferred with local subject matter experts to compile them. None were made available to the candidates beforehand. And time permitting, we will take audience questions after our planned Q&A. Again, I remind you, this is an hour program, and fingers crossed we'll have some time, but we're going to monitor the time that candidates take to respond very closely to hopefully get through the questions and have time to get some questions from the audience. So it's now my pleasure to turn the program over to BAPAC San Diego Candidates Forum Committee Chair Kevin White, who will provide context for this important convening, introduce our guest panelists, and then invite the candidates to make their opening statements. Kevin. Kevin, if you'd unmute, please.
I'm sorry. I'd like to thank everyone who is watching this. It's a very important one. We know that we're down to the wire for the voting. And so as everyone has said so far, we hope that if you haven't voted, you make sure that you get to the polls. Because the choices we make, as Cheryl said, will determine the direction of San Diego. And as America's finest city, the important issues that we will discuss are important not only to the city, but to the county, state, and the nation. Today's forum presents the two candidates that have been introduced for the mayor. San Diego voters, and particularly Black voters, are interested in knowing more about the candidates' commitment to serving all residents in San Diego in an equitable manner, and their positions on the matters vital to our well-being. When we cast our ballots, we need to know we're voting for the person who will best represent our interests wisely, fairly, and equitably. So expect some tough questions, candidates. We welcome you. Thank you for making the time to join us today and to address our concerns. Also, we thank BAPAC Chair Alan Nash and Vice Chair Elise Pitkin-Allen for their extraordinary work in making this event possible. And Cheryl Thea Phelps, our guest moderator for these forums. Joining Cheryl and me today, convening, is Aramik Glass-Blake, the Executive Director of Generation Justice and Restorative Justice Consultant. Now let's get started. We flipped a coin to determine the opening and closing remarks, and we'll hear first from Todd, right?
No, Barbara.
Barbara, I'm sorry.
Barbara, sorry, okay.
So 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Great. Thank you, BAPAC, for organizing this forum today. I first ran for public office for City Council in 2016 after 30 years in the tech and biotech worlds. And I ran because I was frustrated that the street in front of my office was being torn up yet again to have the same work done. I got to City Hall, and what I found is a place where there is no accountability and no transparency, and where major decisions are made behind closed doors. I stood up to it immediately, as I have stood up to similar situations all during my life. I have had an amazing role model, my mother, Adelaide Bree, who as a single mom raised 2 children and went to work at a job where she was paid less than the comparable men, and there was nothing she could do about it. In 1993, I also was a single mom with 2 daughters, 8 and 11, living in a house about to go into foreclosure. I was fortunate to forge a successful career as an entrepreneur in order to support my family. Systemic racism has both human and economic costs, which is why Black Lives Matter. The economic costs were quantified in a recent Citibank study as costing the US economy trillions of dollars in lost opportunity. My priority as mayor is to address these historic inequities through support for the new Office of Race and Equity, support for the new Independent Commission on Police Practices. I believe Measure B is going to pass, through rethinking public safety, through investment in communities that have been underserved, and through my equity economic development plan. I look forward to your questions today.
Thank you. Todd?
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, BAPAC, for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts and views and answer your questions. I look forward to them. For those of you that I don't have the honor of knowing, my name is Todd Gloria, and I serve as the state representative for the 78th District. I've been proud to have a long career in public service, a career that has allowed me to work closely with many of you over the years, with your organization over the years, and the communities that often represent large portions of our local Black community over many years. And it is those experiences, that time in service, that has informed a large part of why I'm running for mayor. I believe that it is time that our city stopped acting like a small town and embrace the fact that we are a big city. The bulk of our primary election was spent debating scooters and vacation rentals, not putting the issues of concern to most San Diegans, and certainly not the issues of most concern to Black San Diegans, on the front of the priority list. From where I stand, the priorities must be that we have to address aggressively our homelessness crisis that is spilling out of downtown and into every neighborhood in this community, including the communities of Southeast San Diego, that we need to build a world-class transportation system to allow more of our residents to be able to access the good paying jobs across this region, not just the few neighborhoods that are currently served by transit, and for those who can afford to drive their own cars. Probably most pressingly is addressing our housing affordability crisis. I'm the son of a hotel maid and a gardener, 2 people who worked their fingers to the bone to buy a home in the city of San Diego. They put their 2 kids through college, the first in our family to attend. That story was possible in San Diego 30 years ago. I think all of us acknowledge that's nearly impossible today. And you need a mayor who's going to show up at City Hall every single day to fight for the opportunities that I have been given by this city, to make sure that you and your children and your grandchildren can also have a place in this city if they're willing to work hard and play by the rules. I look forward to, again, answering your questions this afternoon, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you for your statements, candidates. So that we can establish a baseline of sorts, could you please answer the following questions with yes, no, or I don't know if you don't have an opinion to offer. And I do appreciate listening to your opening statements that you've covered some of the things that we are concerned about, but let's just get some yes or no's on the record. So if elected mayor, will Black Lives Matter in your policy decision-making? Todd?
Yes, and it's
yes, no, or I don't know.
Yes, and it doesn't have to take me being mayor. It's been the case.
Yes, no, or I don't know. Thanks. Barbara?
Yes.
Will Black Lives Matter in your hiring decisions? Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Is systemic, institutional, structural racism a problem in San Diego? Todd?
Absolutely, yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Listen to this one carefully because I hope it will inform your answers to future questions. Are you knowledgeable about specific issues of concern raised by and or affecting San Diego's Black communities that you can address in this elected capacity? Barbara?
Yes, and I'm always learning more.
No. Todd?
Yes, I believe I am.
Thank you. Kevin? You'll want to unmute, please, Kevin.
I'm so sorry for that. So this one deals with COVID, and we know that that is one of the major issues that is on the minds of a lot of voters in terms of the leadership of cities and counties and states and the nation as to how we tackle that problem. So many counties, cities, organizations, individuals, corporations are making significant resource investments in the Black community as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement. If elected, what specific steps will you take to ensure the city's COVID-19 recovery and rebuilding efforts are equitably and focused where there is greatest need? Okay, and we'll go with Barbara.
Yes, a very important question because communities of color have been disproportionately hurt by COVID. So as mayor, I will work with the county to make sure that we have contact tracing, testing, so that we can catch it early, that we are providing opportunities for access to capital and investment in small businesses that have been disproportionately hurt by COVID. And universal internet access is very important. Today, it's an essential for everyone, no matter how old or young you are, for shopping, for healthcare, for social interaction, and for learning.
Okay, Todd.
This is important, and I'm not waiting to become mayor to work on this. I was privileged to be able to work with Dr. Hood to help establish a COVID testing site on Euclid Avenue, not one of two that are in the community now, to make sure that community residents have direct access to get tested and help to stop the spread of this virus. As we know, unemployment is coming down, but it still remains stubbornly high generally, and particularly in communities of color. And it's going to require a focused response by the city to make sure that we are concentrating resources where the need is greatest, and particularly making sure that we use our role at the San Diego Workforce Partnership so that those who are out of work and who are unlikely to go back to work in their previous professions can be retrained to be able to find work. The rent is due tomorrow, right? And they can't wait months or years for them to be able to get back on their feet. We need to help them do that. And I think going forward, Kevin, I think it's really important to acknowledge the city's finances are going to be rocky for the next number of years because of the recession, and making sure that we make strategic reductions that reflect equity, understanding that closing rec centers and libraries in certain neighborhoods can be more devastating than others. I think that's extremely important to have a mayor that understands that. As the former chair of the city's budget committee for 6 years, I get it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
So please answer the following questions. Again, yes, no, I don't know, if you don't have an opinion to offer. Actually, there's just one for this section. Will you prioritize ongoing sustainable funding for the Office of Race and Equity? We'll start with Todd, since Barbara did weigh in her opening statement.
Yeah.
Barbara?
Yes.
Thank you. Mika?
Hey, AG.
You're on mute.
She's muted.
Sorry about that. Will you support reallocating the $29 million that the council has set aside for the police budget to be reassessed at the mid-year review of the budget? And what ideas around reallocation do you have? And we'll start with Barbara.
Great. Thank you. As Todd mentioned, the city's going to have severe budget issues for the next few years. So everything is on the table in the mid-year, including the police budget, everything. In terms of how we're going to operate the city more effectively. As mayor, I am going to step back and look at public safety in general. What do we ask our police officers to do? What's appropriate for them to do? What's more appropriate for a trained social worker or mental health professional to do? What does neighborhood policing mean? What does it mean to be safe in your community? It's a different definition for someone north of 8th than someone in Southeast San Diego. And I want to work with the community and law enforcement to come up with criteria that we believe are equitable and may be different for every community.
Thank you. Todd?
Similar to Councilmember Bree, the mid-year budget deficit is going to be significant. And so everything is going to have to be available for review and to justify ongoing expenses. It's not limited to one department. Every department is going to have to do that work. And going back to what I said to Kevin a moment ago, making sure that that review process is done with an equity lens is going to be important. What I think is obvious is there is a level of consensus on some of the duties that we've asked of law enforcement that the community is no longer comfortable with, and frankly, the law enforcement is not comfortable with. So transitioning responsibilities like homeless outreach, mental health response, truancy, the kinds of things that we know that an outreach worker from a homeless service provider, a mental health clinician from the county, or a school counselor would be a better respondent, and one that would likely cost less is obvious. And those savings could be what we use to make sure that we implement Measure B fully and faithfully. I'm supportive of Measure B. I hope that it passes. I believe that it will. The additional $1 million cost that is anticipated for our independent budget analyst means that we will have to find money to staff that, and I've committed to doing that.
Thank you, Todd. You touched on some really great points. So I want to follow up on that question. Do you agree with and will you support training community members to respond to appropriate situations in the community? As you know, we have different organizations that do great work in the community. And where's your mindset around that concept of using community members to respond instead of police? And you can go, Todd.
Sure. So let me be very clear. I mean, I am extremely comfortable in investing and in helping to train nonprofit organizations, the Paving Great Futures and Blue Heart Pillars and others who do great work, but they shouldn't be a replacement for law enforcement. You know, that what we want to do is make sure that they're able to be there in a preventative fashion. They're interacting, say, with our youth in a way that allows them to avoid the school to prison pipeline that many of us are concerned about. That should be what we do. I don't believe that we should be asking local residents to step into the roles of law enforcement in terms of enforcing the law, but I do see them as being able to serve in either a preventative fashion or, as is your expertise, in restorative justice fashion, making sure that the back end, if we don't prevent something bad from happening, that we can actually get it back to good in a non-law enforcement setting if the transgression is appropriate for that.
Thank you, Todd. Barbara?
I think what's important about community organization is they know what's going on in the neighborhood. They know what's happening on the ground in a way that a police officer or someone at City Hall can never know. So they're an important source of information and an important link to the community. And I see community organizations like Paving Great Futures and Pillars of the Community as important partners. And, you know, we're going to have to think in new ways for many reasons, partly because we're going to have less money and because I think we need to operate the city in a better way to serve our residents. And this is, you know, as an entrepreneur, I've had to think in new ways my whole life. And it's time to think in new ways of what public safety means in terms of what law enforcement needs. And I think that the community organizations are going to play a key role in this.
Thank you, Barbara. And my final question, and Todd, you touched on this as well, and Barbara, you touched on this. But as you know, restorative justice is huge in our community. And there have been works to get $3 million set aside on the city level. Is that something that you would be willing to commit to around restorative justice and dealing with the incarceration of our young people in San Diego City? And we'll go with Barbara.
Yeah, so I think the concept of restorative justice is excellent. I have 2 school teachers in my family, and it's, you know, very important in the schools right now. But at this point, I'm other than committing to funding Measure B, the Independent Police Review Commission, and the new Office of Race and Equity. I don't want to commit to anything specific because of the dire revenue shortfall that the city is facing. One thing I want to do as mayor is do a lot more with private philanthropy and grants. This is an area where the city has not done a good job of accessing funding that is available. And I think the restorative justice area is a really good opportunity to get outside money to fund.
Thank you, Todd.
Similar response. When I was on the council, I voted to approve a resolution brought forward by then council member Marty Emerald around restorative justice, committing the city to operating under that paradigm, that you have to take the next step, right, and actually fund it. And Councilmember Bree is correct. And she's chair of the budget committee now. She knows the cliff that we're about to head over. What I would say is I don't want to say a no to that today. What I want to say is we need a level of engagement with the community to make sure that as we rebuild our economy and the city gets back into the black, that we recognize that we're not forgetting this need, and that we can somehow and make sure and focus that when those new dollars start coming in, that we can invest them here. I'm a believer that these are dollars that end up saving dollars in the long run, and understanding that from a budgetary perspective is really important.
Thank you, Todd. Ms. Cheryl.
Thank you, Mika. So please answer the following questions. Yes, no, I don't know, if you don't have an opinion to offer. Barbara, you've touched more than once on the Office of Race and Equity. Todd, I trust you're tracking this, because whichever one of you is in office, this will be the office we look to evaluate and give recommendations on addressing racism and discrimination in our city. And these questions have to do with, frankly, will you listen and will you act? So, will you review and reform policies that the Office of Race and Equity may find contribute to discrimination and racism within the city's hiring, employment, and promotion practices, even if department heads show resistance? Yes or no? Todd?
Oh, of course, yes.
Barbara?
Yes, I've stood up to the bureaucracy more than once.
Will you include Black and African individuals on your transition team, Todd?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Will you appoint Black or African staff in the mayor's office? Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
In policy senior leadership positions, Todd?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Last question. Do you support passage of Proposition 16? Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin? And unmute, please, Kevin.
Trying to not be disruptive. Get my mic off. Okay. So following through with some of that a little bit more, there are several city departments that have historically been underrepresented by people of color, and more specifically, Black and African people. And so what specifically will you do to change this unfortunate trend? And how will you eliminate barriers and diversify the numerous city boards and commissions? We'll go with Barbara first.
Yeah, so it's clear there's a racial and pay disparity gap at City Hall. We got a preliminary report last year that indicated this, and now a more in-depth report is being done by our Human Resources Department, and we should have the results in early next year. And you need the data to be able to then take appropriate actions. First of all, as mayor, I will lead by having senior leadership from the Black community, both on my transition team and on my permanent team as mayor. And then as mayor, I will work to identify where we're going to have openings, who are promising people of all colors, with a focus on getting rid of the disparities that we've had at City Hall, and providing opportunities for advancement and promotion and participation in city management programs, so that people get the skills that they need when opportunities for advancement come along.
Okay, Todd?
Kevin, I think to answer your question, of course, the tone has to be set from the top. And as you may know, we have never in our city's history elected a person of color to the mayor's office. I would be the one that would break that barrier. But I recognize that I alone am not going to solve the city's diversity issues, and that we're going to have a true commitment to actually following through and bringing more folks behind you, right? You don't just break the barrier, but you reach back and bring folks with you. So whether that's on the political staff of the mayor's office, the operations staff of the civil service, and then the boards and commissions appointment, we have to see diversity in all of those ranks, including Black and African folks, but also people from the whole of the diversity of our city. What I would say, and this is what I would hope that BAPAC could help me do, is to help identify candidates, not just for the hired positions, although those are important, but for those board and commission appointments. I think many of you have either done it yourself, or you know by experience that these are often unpaid positions that meet at inconvenient times and open you up and require you to disclose a lot of your personal information. That can be prohibiting for some folks. And we need partners like BAPAC to identify these individuals and help bring them forward so that we can ensure the diversity that you need to have. My administration will reflect the diversity.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, candidates, for your answers thus far. So here I am again. Please answer the following questions. Yes, no, or I don't know if you don't have an opinion to offer. Is biased policing a problem in San Diego? Yes or no, Todd? I'm sorry, can you hear me, Todd?
But yes.
Yeah, I beg your pardon, I didn't hear you. Barbara?
Yes.
Is over policing occurring in communities of color? Todd?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Are there certain San Diego Police Department functions that would be more appropriately carried out by non-law enforcement entities? Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Do you support CPACs? Do I need to give you that acronym? Coalition for Police Accountability and Transparency's Protect Policy Recommendations. Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Do you support passage of Measure B? I already know what you're going to say, Barbara, because you mentioned it in your opening.
Yes.
Todd?
Yeah. Okay.
Todd? Barbara, this would, yeah, as you know, the commission, it would establish a commission on police practices, Measure B. Barbara?
Yes.
And Todd, you did say yes. Lastly, have you taken endorsements from police unions? Todd?
Yes.
Barbara?
No.
Mika?
Thank you all. Several studies, most notably the SDSU study in 2016, Campaign Zero report less than a year ago, and the statewide RIPA board have all documented racial and identity disparities in San Diego police practices, from traffic stops to use of force, arrest. How do you plan to address the findings around these consistent biases within the police department? And we'll go, I don't know who answered the last question, but we'll go with Todd.
Sure. So I have laid out a racial justice platform on my website. This is a complex issue and it deserves a full answer. So I'd ask folks to go to toddgloria.com, download and look at that. And I welcome people's feedback. If we have missed things, if we should change stuff, again, I welcome people's feedback. In terms of how you address it, well, first off, you believe the data. Others have said we need more data. I think 2 studies are sufficient to say that this is an issue. And in terms of what we do, it's full implementation of state legislation. Many of them are bills authored by Dr. Shirley Weber, who I'm proud to have the endorsement of in this race, to make sure that we're adhering to use of force standards, that we are updating, reforming our gang registry. And I think we can go further than that. Some of the CPAP recommendations are good ones. I think other things is making sure that pretext stops are stopped or significantly reformed, that we look at gang injunctions. There are a number of areas where we can, I think, be fair when it comes to law enforcement in San Diego. And my goal is to make us a national leader when it comes to policing in the 21st century. We had that previously. We can regain it, but it takes an equity lens again.
Thank you, Todd. Barbara?
Yeah, Todd mentioned many good things, and I would simply add, it starts with who we hire as a police officer, the training that we give them, both at the police academy and ongoing. I should have backed up and said, starts by acknowledging there's a problem. So then who we recruit, how we retain them, how we train them, both at the beginning and ongoing, and how we hold them accountable for the results.
Thank you, Barbara. My next question is, how difficult is it to implement reforms when you have police unions and police associations embedded in our political system? I'll start with Barbara this time.
So it's a challenge. If we all look back at 2018, when I first heard about the Independent Police Review Commission and I supported it, there were only 4 of us who would vote to put it on the ballot at the time, and it did not get on the ballot in 2018. And that was, quite frankly, because of intense lobbying by the Police Officers Association against it. And we have seen in other cities around the country that police chiefs, quite frankly, have been frustrated with the labor unions representing the police officers. But as mayor, I am here to represent you, the residents of the city, to make sure that you live in a neighborhood that you feel is safe by your criteria of safe. And I think with proper support from the community, we can make meaningful reforms. This time around, it was a unanimous vote at the council to put the Independent Police Commission on the ballot. But of course, the world had changed because of the tragic murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
Thank you, Barbara. Todd?
Sarah Meek, I think not limited to police reform, any kind of meaningful reform is rarely easy, right? If it's going to do something substantial, it will be difficult, and that should be, and that's true in many issues. Here's what I think. I certainly have never been one to be afraid of pushing forward for things that are right. Whether that's pushing an increase to the city's minimum wage, pushing our city's climate action plan, a number of things were difficult measures, but we got them done because they were worthy of doing. My vision is that we should not wait until we become a Minneapolis or a Louisville or a Sacramento or so many of the cities that are now in the registry of cities that have had horrible tragedies happen and that have really created a tremendous issues in the community. We should be proactive in this regard. We should pursue reform agenda. And I actually think that you look at my record in Sacramento and supporting AB 392, supporting a host of other criminal justice reforms at the state level. I'm proud that I have the endorsement of Dr. Shirley Weber. I also, as I've mentioned, have the endorsement of our police officers. And I think that that's a potential of giving me the chance to actually pursue and actually achieve these reforms. If we can agree and bring two different sides together around this candidacy, I believe that I can also bring people together around needed reforms that will keep our communities safe.
So I have a few follow-up questions. And the question around how hard is it for police associations and police unions? How hard is it for you to get certain reforms? What ways have you already stood up to either police unions or associations, or stood up for justice as a whole to get certain reforms in place? Can you give us some examples of that? And I'll start with Todd.
Sure. So we have passed or attempted to pass many different things. When I was a member of the Sandag Public Safety Committee, I spoke out aggressively on the violations of privacy of innocent San Diegans when it came to license plate readers, Stingray, and other invasive technology. I took that fight to Sacramento, where I helped to pass a bill that was later vetoed by the governor that would have regulated and reformed the way that law enforcement collects military weapons and equipment. I don't believe we should be militarizing our police department. That bill was heavily opposed by law enforcement. I was able to get it on the governor's desk. Unfortunately, the governor at the time, as I mentioned, vetoed it. My support of AB 392 and support of Dr. Weber's efforts to do police reform, I think is important. My opposition to repealing some of the criminal justice reforms that are on this November's ballot is further example of my willingness to do what I think is right. And so I have a long track record of this. I'm proud of my track record when it comes to standing up for criminal justice reform. I will continue to do that as mayor.
Thank you. Barbara?
Yes. So in 2018, I supported the Independent Police Review Commission going on the ballot, even though the POA, the police officers, were adamantly opposed and lobbied very intensely. And I'm very honored that because of that, Andrea St. Julian, the author of that measure and president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association, is supporting me for mayor. I also, AB 392 was a state bill, but I did vote to support it in a resolution at the city council before the state assembly and state senate actually voted on that bill. And it was a very emotional day. Dr. Weber sat there for hours as we listened to very intense public testimony from the community about the wrongs they had suffered over the years. And we also did hear from the Police Officers Association about why they thought we shouldn't support it at that time. I also voted not to fund the streetlight contract for the current fiscal year. This was against the wishes of the Police Officers Association. So, you know, there are a number of times that I have stood up to them. I've stood up to other special interests during my time at City Hall. I'm not looking to make a long-term career out of being an elected official. I'm looking to make a difference in our city by being your next mayor.
Thank you, Barbara.
Excuse me. In the interest of time, why don't we move on to the infrastructure section? I apologize, Mika. I know we have other questions in this area for both candidates, but only 20 minutes left.
You are letting them off the hook. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if they agree to stay longer, we can come back. Infrastructure, yes, no, I don't know. Candidates, should City of San Diego prioritize completion of infrastructure improvements for underserved and overlooked neighborhoods in south of Interstate 8 prior to expenditure of funds for development of neighborhoods north of Interstate 8? Yes or no? Todd?
I don't know.
Yes, no, I don't know. I beg your pardon. You do have that third option.
Yeah, I would want to know more about that, because some of the money you're talking about is segregated by neighborhood. We can change
Yes,
that.
no, we can expand shortly. Yes, no, I don't know, Barbara.
I don't know.
Will you commit to ensuring the city offers equitable contracting and procurement opportunities? Todd?
Absolutely, yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Will you ensure that San Diego's Black and African business community has full and meaningful participation in the in upcoming city-related projects, whatever they are? But let's mention a few that are on everyone's mind because they're the big ones. Please respond yes, no, or I don't know if you don't have an opinion regarding ensuring that Black and African business community has full and meaningful participation in these projects. Should it pass the $900 million housing bond, Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
The SDSU Mega Sports and Housing Complex? Todd?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Port of San Diego Coastal Building and Facilities Complex? Barbara?
Yes, to the extent a mayor can.
Yes or no? Fair enough. Todd?
I'm sorry, Cheryl, can you repeat the project?
The Port of San Diego Coastal Building and Facilities Complex.
Yes. Yeah.
And then broadly, any other municipal projects that are publicly funded? Todd?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin?
Okay. As we continue to see some of the crumbling infrastructure across the city, but especially in neighborhoods south of 8th, what is your plan to improve the infrastructure in these communities? Specifically, what plans do you have? We'll start with Todd.
Sure. Well, I think it starts with making better use of the existing funds that we have. My concern is that some of the state funding we've sent to the city for road repair is going unutilized. You can look at the KPBS iNews source that shows the city has been relatively undisciplined when it comes to spending those dollars. And that's pretty offensive when you see the condition of roads across our community, let alone our older communities. Additionally, you have millions of dollars going unspent in various accounts at the city. As I mentioned to Cheryl a moment ago, some of those dollars are limited to certain neighborhoods, but certainly the city could choose to, and I believe this is a part of the current Complete Communities proposal, to re-envision the fee structure to allow for more equity across neighborhoods. And I think that that's important, particularly as some of our older neighborhoods are asked to accept more density. And then lastly, I would say that we must update our fees that we charge to developers to make sure that we're charging 2020 prices, not 1980s or 1990s prices. Those dollars don't go nearly as far with the kinds of costs that we have for construction and wood and et cetera. We need to make sure that we're getting our fair share of dollars for them. And then lastly, I would put to use my experiences at the county, state, and federal level to make sure as mayor, I'm a good advocate and bringing back our fair share of the pie when it comes to those higher levels of government funding and grants.
Thank you, Todd. Barbara?
Yeah, I think Todd made a lot of good points. I don't want to be repetitive. There are many sources of money out there, some of which we're getting, some of which we're not. We can do a better job of using the money that the city already gets. That's one reason I'm running for mayor. As a council member, you don't have a lot of control over that. And the third thing you can do is set up an equity index, similar to what we've done with our park and recreation funding, where we're prioritizing projects in the southern part of the city after doing an analysis that they were indeed being cheated. And there also is private philanthropy that we can leverage. There's a new San Diego Parks Foundation that is installing Wi-Fi at rec centers starting south of 8. and their priority is to work with enhancing park and rec facilities south of Interstate 8 in a similar way that we have a library foundation. When you give $1 to the library foundation and you want to earmark it for us, like say the Pacific Beach Library, 20 cents of that money goes into an equity fund that is used in other parts of the city. And the Parks Foundation is looking at doing something similar.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
Thank you. Yes, no. Oh, no, that'll be Mika. Why don't you take this round? Thank you. Since I took your last set question.
It's okay. It's okay. Affordable housing. Please answer the following questions, yes or no, or I don't know if you don't have an opinion. And we will start with Barbara. Do you support the current $900 million affordable housing bond assurance on the November ballot? Yes or no?
I don't know.
Todd, yes or no?
Yes.
Do you support Prop 21 rent control measure? Barbara, yes or no?
No.
Todd, yes or no?
No.
Do you support extending the eviction moratoriums to make sure San Diegans are economically impacted by COVID-19 to remain in their homes? So I'll repeat that question. Do you support the eviction moratoriums to make sure that the San Diego residents who are economically impacted by COVID-19 are protected and can stay in their homes? Yes or no, Barbara?
No, I don't think an eviction moratorium is the answer.
Yes or no, Todd?
Yes.
Kevin, you can take over.
Kevin, you're on.
Are you muted, Kevin?
The lack of affordable housing is a major issue across the city, but it appears many more affordable housing units are constructed in certain council districts, particularly districts 1 through 5 and 7. What is your plan to ensure availability of affordable housing in all council districts, and what neighborhoods should be first for construction of affordable housing, and what informs your opinion on that? And Barbara first.
Affordable housing should be built in every community. In my council district, which is north of 8, in the eastern part of Carmel Valley, Pacific Highlands Ranch, 20% of all the new housing units there are affordable. In University City, which is the only other major area in my council district which has new construction, 10% of all the new housing is affordable. Where we build it is also going to depend on where we have land. I think what's most important is as we update community plans and we allow developers to increase density, particularly along transit corridors, it's important that we ask for something back. And that's what I did as a council member when we updated the Morena Boulevard plan, which is along a transit corridor. It's where the old Toys R Us and Jerome's Furniture was. And and as part of that community plan update, 15% of the new housing in that community has to be affordable. So I think as we have new development in communities, we have the opportunity. There's a new project we just approved in Mira Mesa called 3 Roots, 1,800 new housing units. 10% of those will be affordable. So new construction, wherever it's going to be, gives us this opportunity.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, this housing crisis is enormous. It's the biggest issue facing the city. We need to build more housing of all types, but particularly we need to focus on housing construction for the working and middle class. Tell me if you heard this one before. I don't earn enough to rent any of the luxury stuff that's getting built, but I earn too much for any of the programs the city has to offer. Really pushing out so many people who deserve a place in this community. That's where my focus will be. You asked, where should this go? Well, again, every community should participate in solving this problem. It's a citywide problem, and therefore every neighborhood must participate. And if every neighborhood does, no one neighborhood will be radically changed. You asked where we prioritize it. Well, we should prioritize it at nearest to job centers and nearest to existing transportation infrastructure, which I think will help us to facilitate our climate action plan goals. And lastly, of course, every community should do its fair share when it comes to affordable housing. I regret that only 7 of the 9 city council districts have permanent supportive housing. Kevin, this is the housing that allows people to get off the streets who were formerly homeless. One of those districts that does not have any is my opponent's district. I will tell you that I've led by example. I was on the city council. We cited a permanent supportive housing project just blocks my home. I will continue to lead by example if I may.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
Thanks. Candidates, please give your answer to the following question. Yes, no, I don't know, if you don't have an opinion to offer. Do you support future state and local economic relief and protections for immigrant and undocumented families and mixed status families who've been left out of other COVID relief programs? Todd?
Absolutely, yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Do you support and advocate to stop all voluntary transfers from police to federal immigration authorities unless pursuant to a judicial warrant or otherwise required by law? Barbara?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Thank you. Mika?
Homelessness. According to the last year's homeless census, Black people make up less than 6% of the county's population, but we are 22% of the county's homeless population. What do you believe are the root causes of homelessness? Barbara?
I think the root cause is different for each person. I think the reason there are more Black homeless is due to systemic racism, lack of access to mental health, substance abuse programs, job opportunities, housing opportunities. I think it's because of systemic racism why we see larger numbers of Black people sadly living on the streets.
Thank you. Todd?
There are many reasons that people are homeless, but you correctly identify the overrepresentation of African Americans amongst our homeless population, and certainly our overcriminalization, our laws that have placed many folks in a situation where they can't actually get housing, right? Good luck renting someplace from somebody if you have a criminal record, if you have a lack of work history, so on and so forth. That is very much a part of systemic racism. It's a part of racism that's sort of baked into our society, and we have to root it out. I will tell you that Los Angeles has done, I think, an exceptional job of identifying this issue and really identifying how to fix it. They still have a lot of work to do on executing it. San Diego hasn't quite clearly had that same conversation. As mayor, I'd be interested in making sure that we do that.
Thank you, Todd. Well, you led into something great. You said 2 key words, root causes, and then also how will you address the homeless issue and the root causes and then the low-hanging fruit in the city of San Diego? What is your plan to address our unsheltered population? And we'll start again with Barbara.
Yeah, so root causes, as I said, it's different for each individual. Someone could simply have lost a job and they can't afford the rent. A veteran may have gotten out of the Navy and be suffering from PTSD. Someone may have a mental health or substance abuse issue. And that is true for a growing number of individuals, mental health and substance abuse programs. And my approach is to partner with the county, which the city is doing a better job of. The convention center has proven to be a success in terms of getting individuals the help that they need, whether it's reuniting them with their family, getting them into a substance or mental health program, or finding permanent housing for them. The convention center has been a success, and I will continue to build on that effort as mayor with a more seamless system. We have a system that is very disparate right now, despite years of efforts to make it more streamlined. There is still not there needs to be one place you can call when you want to get the help that you need, and we do not have that right now.
Thank you, Barbara. Todd?
one number is a nice idea, but if it's a number that doesn't have a housing unit to send someone to, then we're not going to solve the problem. And that's why only having select council districts house homeless people is a part of why we're not going to solve this problem unless everyone is being a part of the solution. Listen, this is a complex issue. It deserves a much more than a 1 minute answer. But let me tell you that there are cities across this nation that are ending chronic homelessness. San Diego is clearly not one of them, but we should aspire to be one of them. The way they do it is through a process of housing first, not telling people to get clean and sober or solve all their issues before we can house them or provide them services. It's saying we'll get you housed, we'll wrap you around with services, and we will keep you housed in the long run. We can do that here if we choose to do that. We have not chosen to do that. Instead, we followed less than national best practices, including criminalization of the homeless, something that I would not vote to do, but my opponent has.
Thank you, Todd. Ms. Cheryl, you can take back over.
Thank you. Thank you again, candidates, for your continued participation in this. You said some things that have given me pause, both of you. And so I'm interested, as are everyone listening to this program and watching this program, who influences you within our community? Who persuades you? Who pulls your coattail if you are making a decision that doesn't quite square with our values? So, and I'd like you to name names if you would. To whom do you look for insight and guidance on issues of concern to Black Americans generally and Black San Diegans specifically? Todd.
Well, I have a long history with the community, and so whether it's Matthew Gordon, who's on my staff, or other members of my team who are from the Black community, two people I've long had relationships with and that I trust, people like Rosemary Pope, Rudy Johnson, Ken Marlborough. I've been fortunate to have a number of folks supporting me in this campaign and who I regularly rely upon for advice and guidance. As a state legislator, I could not have spent the last 4 years in Sacramento without the guidance and learning that I'd learned from the woman who's an assembly member, but also a lifelong teacher, Dr. Shirley Weber. And I'll continue to rely upon those folks if elected mayor.
Thank you. Barbara.
I've had many great women in the Black community mentor me and advise me, starting with Marissa Martin Talbert, who's our Director of Community Engagement on our campaign, Mika, Genevieve Jones-Wright, Andrea St. Julian, Dr. Willie Blair, Ellen Nash, Elise Pipkin-Allen, and many more, many pastors and others who take the time to talk to me and educate me all the time.
Thank you. In your career, what efforts have you made to empower and listen to the voices of Black San Diegans within your sphere of influence? Now, I recognize that you have people on your staff and would appreciate knowing how they have guided you in their policy, in your policy-making decisions. Todd.
Well, I've had a number of folks who have been very helpful. I mean, Matthew Gordon is a superstar. I keep encouraging him because I just think his future is so big and so bright. And I keep encouraging him to go further and deeper and bigger. And his involvement has been helpful. You know, he's my representative to the La Jolla community. And I recognize that can sometimes be a personal challenge for him, but I have been so proud to watch him go in that community and speak truth and bring back information that's important and valuable to me. I would also say that I've been proud when I was the interim mayor of the city of San Diego that I hired Monica Montgomery to be a part of my team, giving her first job at City Hall. I think that has paid off dividends for the community in a way that I couldn't have anticipated, but I saw the talent, the raw talent that was there, and I think that she's proven me and many other people completely right. She is an incredible leader. I also am proud to have appointed Genevieve Jones-Wright to the city's gang commission. Again, someone who, when I met, was clearly someone who deserved a position of leadership in the city, and she has also proven that faith to be well placed. I look forward to continuing to find incredible talent in this community and doing all that I can to empower them, not just in the Black community, but in the Latino community, the API community, the LGBTQ community. It is time for a new San Diego, one that is much more representative of our population as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, just for answering these questions. Ellen, Elise, do we have questions from the audience in our queue?
I don't see any. There aren't any.
Thank you. Then, Kevin, why don't you take it from here?
Okay. I want to thank the audience and I want to thank the candidates for your thoughtful answers. So as we come to the end of our time together, As we stated, each candidate will have an opportunity to have a 2-minute closing statement. Other than what you've shared with us today, we welcome what more you care to tell us about your past education, training, and lived experiences that make you uniquely qualified and suited to be or to serve as mayor of San Diego. And with that, I think we agreed that
Todd.
Todd would go first. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you all so much for this opportunity. You know, Kevin, my parents raised my brother and I to believe that if you care about something, you're supposed to leave it better than you found it. Growing up in a blue-collar community like I did, we often didn't have access to a car, and we'd often have to borrow other people's cars. And it was kind of always confusing to me that we were borrowing people's cars because we didn't have money, but we would always have to wash the car and fill it with gas before we returned it. And when I'd look at the sponges and the buckets and the water and the gas, which was not cheap then, nor is it now, I didn't understand that. But my parents explained to me that you couldn't borrow someone's car without giving it back better than you found it. Well, the fact of the matter is I care deeply about this city, and I want to leave it better than I found it. And those experiences of growing up working class in San Diego, recognizing how hard my parents worked to make ends meet in this town, I've never forgotten. That is why you saw me lead to raise the city's minimum wage and provide paid sick days to every worker in our city. It's why you see me push hard for more public transit in our community, because I rode that as a kid, and I know how transformative that access to a bus pass and a good job was for me personally. And of course, it is why I've pushed our climate action plan with a strong social equity component, because I recognize that Black and brown folks care about the environment too, and that we should have a stake in the upside of climate action, which are good paying green jobs. These are not things I will forget as mayor. The best predictor of what someone will do is what they have done in the past. And what you have seen me do over a 20+ year career is be present in the community, working closely with organizations, listening intently, and then acting boldly. I will continue to do that as your mayor, and I ask humbly for your vote if you go vote in the next couple of days or when you go on November the 3rd. Thank you all very much, and thank you, BAPAC, for this opportunity.
All right, thank you. Barbara?
Thank you. I've had an extraordinary life. My most important role model is my mother, Adelaide Bree, who was a single mother raising 2 children in the 1960s, paid less than the comparable men. There was nothing she could do about it. She empowered me to believe I could succeed in the business world, and I'm proud that I earned an MBA from Harvard in 1976, at a time few women were earning an MBA anywhere. I spent much of my early career as either the only woman in the room or one of a few women. And in 1993, I found myself as a single mom with 2 daughters, 8 and 11. I had a job. I wasn't going to starve. My family wasn't going to starve, but I was not earning enough to pay all the bills. And that's when I left UCSD and became an entrepreneur in the tech and biotech worlds. And I'm blessed to have had the success that I've had. And I'm very aware that many young San Diegans, particularly in the Black community, do not have the opportunities that I had. And I am committed to changing that. I truly believe that the diversity of my life experiences, that I've been a journalist, an entrepreneur, I've started 2 organizations that empower women, Run Women Run, and Athena San Diego, has prepared me to lead this city at this moment in time, particularly my background in tech and biotech, which are the good jobs of the future, and they create good service sector jobs around them, like construction, accounting, finance, marketing. And these jobs historically have not been accessible to young people growing up south of 8. That will change with Barbara Bree as mayor, with my school engagement coordinator, who will make sure that our young people get access to paid internships, particularly in tech and biotech, which will be booming downtown. This is going to be transformational for our city. I'm very blessed. I'm married to the love of my life, my second and last husband, Neil Centuria. Sometimes first things don't work out. We each brought 2 children to our marriage. They're all in their 30s. They married people we adore. We have 3 grandchildren right now, with
Thank
4
you, Barbara.
more coming.
Thank you, Barbara.
And that's who I think about every day.
All right. So we'd like to thank both candidates for your closing statement, but we really want to thank you for your time and participation in this forum. Thank you, the audience, for your careful attention. I wish we had more time, but at last we are concluding. So I'd like to turn the program over right now to the chair of BAPAC, extraordinary woman, Ellen Nash. And Ellen, take it from here. Take us home.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Assembly Member Todd Gloria and Council Member Barbara B for being here. You know, I love you both. And I appreciate you being here and taking the time. I wish we had more time. An hour was not enough. In fact, the only text messages I'm getting is, why were there so many yes or no answers? I said, well, we only had an hour and we had to get the issues addressed, but that also puts us in a position to continue those conversations around those yes or no issues. And I look forward as the chair of BAPAC and the residents of San Diego to continuing those conversations. I do want to mention and encourage that right after this forum at 4 o'clock, many of us are going to be meeting at Malcolm X Library, and we're going to actually caravan to the Registrar of Voters office. So please, anyone on the call, Facebook Live, you guys are watching, meet us at 4 o'clock, and we're going to caravan to the voter registrar's office with our ballot. And this is the season to vote. So I want to encourage everyone to vote. If you want to do some phone banking, canvassing for the candidates, for Get Out to Vote, those opportunities are there for you. Just reach out to BAPAC and we'll let you know. And again, I want to wish you both the best of luck. We're in good hands with either one of you. I know we're in good hands. The city's in good hands and we'll move this city forward, but particularly African Americans and Africans. We need your help. We need your leadership. We really need you to address some of the issues that are plaguing our communities, particularly African Americans. We're at the bottom of all homeless, education. We're at the bottom, and we need to then increase our livelihoods into the middle class and the upper middle class for that matter, so that we can be successful residents of America's finest city. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.